The council chambers were filled with hushed voices as leaders from across the galaxy gathered, their faces grim under the weight of impending doom. Alien species, once proud and mighty, now stood together in desperation. The Xartok Empire, a relentless war machine, had crushed everything in its path, and the galaxy's strongest fleets had fallen one by one. The capital worlds of the greatest alliances had been reduced to ash, their defenders overwhelmed. Entire species were on the brink of extinction, and the collective hope of the galaxy was rapidly fading. Commander Ilarag Sinter of the Fanak, one of the remaining war chiefs, addressed the council, her voice steady but edged with sorrow. "We have fought valiantly, but our forces are insufficient. The Xartok are too powerful. Our fleets are scattered, our resources exhausted. Even our advanced shipyards can no longer construct warships fast enough. We are on the brink of annihilation." Her words were met with silence. The room was full of war-weary leaders, their faces marked by the toll of endless conflict. Each species had contributed what it could, but the Xartok's onslaught had been relentless. Every planet they captured only served to fuel the Empire's hunger for conquest. It seemed there was no force strong enough to stop them. Then the doors to the council chamber opened, and the humans stepped forward. Their leader, General Nathan Drake, a seasoned war hero from Earth, stood tall at the front of his delegation. His eyes, steely and determined, swept over the room. "We've been watching," he said, his voice cutting through the tension. "And now we're here to offer a solution." Alara's eyes narrowed. "We've heard your promises before, humans. What makes your people any different from the rest? The galaxy's greatest fleets have fallen to the Xartok. What could you possibly offer that will change the outcome?" Nathan Drake remained calm, his gaze unwavering. "Our ships." The council murmured, confused. The humans had been building something, but no one had known the full extent of it. Drake raised his hand, signaling for silence. "We've been working in secret. The warships we've created are unlike anything this galaxy has seen. They combine human ingenuity, advanced technology, and a little something extra." He paused, letting the tension build. "These ships are our final charge, and we're ready to lead it." Whispers spread like wildfire across the chamber. The humans had always been resourceful, but would their technology truly be enough to challenge the Xartok's overwhelming power? The council was skeptical, but at the edge of despair, they had no other choice. Nathan's voice rang out again, resolute. "We'll fight with you, but more importantly, we'll fight for you. Together, we can end this." The future of the galaxy now rested on the shoulders of humanity. The council room was buzzing with uncertainty and anticipation as General Nathan Drake's words echoed in their minds. No one could deny that humanity had made a bold promise. The thought of a new fleet was enticing, but would it be enough? Could these human-made warships truly alter the course of the war against the Xartok? Later that day, the leaders were led to a hidden facility on the far side of the planet, a secure location that humanity had insisted on for the unveiling. Massive hangar doors, reinforced with layers of military-grade shielding, loomed before them. The alien commanders stood at the entrance, shifting nervously. No one had seen the warships in their entirety, and some began to doubt the rumors that had spread about them. What could these ships offer that their own fleets had not? Nathan stepped forward and activated a series of commands on a small terminal. With a low hum, the hangar doors began to slowly rise. What emerged from the shadows was not just impressive. It was overwhelming. The first ship to emerge was a colossal dreadnought, its dark hull gleaming like obsidian under the lights. Towering above the ground, it seemed to stretch on forever, its silhouette casting an imposing shadow over the gathered commanders. The vessel was sleek, angular, yet undeniably powerful. Twin ion cannons extended from its bow like great mechanical claws, ready to rip through anything in its path. Its engines, glowing with an intense blue light, suggested unimaginable speed and agility for such a massive craft. What is this?" whispered Admiral Tarath, an alien warlord from the Vorik dynasty, his voice filled with awe. He had seen some of the galaxy's most formidable ships, but nothing like this. This is the Sovereign, the first of the human dreadnoughts. Nathan Drake's voice boomed proudly, his tone unwavering. We call them the Titan class. Equipped with energy shields that can withstand a direct assault from Sartok plasma cannons and weaponry that can level entire fleets, these ships are built for one purpose: victory. Behind the Sovereign, several smaller, but no less formidable, vessels emerged from the shadows. These were the Aegis-class cruisers, sleek, heavily armed ships designed for precision strikes and fast-paced skirmishes. They were equipped with plasma torpedoes, energy shield disruptors, and advanced stealth capabilities. And then came the Vanguard-class fighters, small, nimble ships capable of dogfights and rapid assaults. The alien commanders stood in stunned silence, their eyes wide as they took in the magnitude of humanity's creation. The ships weren't just powerful, they were unlike anything they had ever seen. They were built for total warfare, a fusion of human creativity, adaptability, and ruthlessness. The Sovereign is our flagship, Nathan continued. But these ships, these are just the beginning. We've designed them to not only fight but to survive in the harshest environments. And they're ready for battle. A murmur of disbelief swept through the assembly. Humanity's warships were no longer rumors. They were a tangible force, and they had arrived at the exact moment when the galaxy needed them most. With these ships, the humans had made their stand clear. The galaxy could either fall or they could rise. Together, the first major assault was set into motion quickly. With the full might of humanity's warships now revealed, the Council had agreed to launch a strike on a key Sartok stronghold, a heavily fortified planet that served as a central supply hub for their empire. Intelligence suggested that it was heavily guarded, but it was the perfect test to see if humanity's warships could truly make a difference on the battlefield. The human fleet, led by the Sovereign and flanked by the Aegis-class cruisers and Vanguard-class fighters, made its way through the galaxy's war-torn sectors. As they approached the planet's orbit, the fleet's sensors detected a dense web of Sartok defensive structures, from orbital cannons to fighter battalions patrolling the atmosphere below. The Sartok Empire had no intention of letting this planet fall without a fight. General Nathan Drake stood on the command bridge of the Sovereign, staring out at the holographic battlefield. The tactical displays were alive with red blips, the enemy's fleet and defenses locked in place, ready for war. He didn't flinch. This was what humanity's warships were made for. As the human fleet entered firing range, Drake's voice rang out, cold and resolute. Activate shields. Prepare all weapons, and let's show them what we're made of. The human ships moved in formation, their advanced sensors and AI-controlled systems sensing in perfect harmony. The Sovereign's massive cannons hummed to life, the energy fields surrounding the ship flickering as they charge. On the lower decks, the crews worked with practiced precision, each one a cog in the vast, unyielding war machine. The first shot fired from the Sovereign's primary cannon, a blinding beam of concentrated energy that cut through the Sartok's orbital defenses like a hot knife through butter. The Sartok fleet responded immediately, unleashing a barrage of plasma and missile fire, but humanity's ships were ready. The Aegis-class cruisers deployed their energy shields, deflecting incoming fire with ease, while the Vanguard-class fighters darted through the chaos, striking enemy fighter squadrons in rapid succession. The human warships weren't just surviving, they were dominating. The Sartok, taken by surprise by the intensity of the assault, quickly began to retreat, their once dominant formations now in disarray. But their defeat was not as simple as it seemed. Out of nowhere, a hidden fleet emerged from a nearby nebula, a massive Sartok battle group, larger and more powerful than anything the humans had anticipated. Brace for impact. Drake shouted as the tactical screens lit up with incoming threats. The human warships were forced to engage the new Sartok forces head-on. For a moment, it seemed like the tide would turn. The human fleet began to suffer heavy casualties as the Tartak unleashed a terrifying array of weapons. Massive railguns, energy mines, and plasma storms that hammered at the Sovereign's hull. But even under this pressure, the human ships didn't falter. The Sovereign's shields flickered, absorbing the blows, and its advanced repair systems worked overtime to patch up the damage. The Aegis-class cruisers shifted tactics, launching rapid strikes against the Tartak battle group's vulnerable points. And just as it seemed the battle might be lost, the Vanguard-class fighters swooped in, distracting the Tartak flagship long enough for a decisive strike. In the end, it was the human warship's combination of resilience, overwhelming firepower, and tactical ingenuity that won the day. The Tartak forces, battered and scattered, began to retreat, leaving the planet in the hands of the humans and their allies. The first victory had been secured. As the fleet returned to orbit, Drake surveyed the damage. The battle had been fierce, but the human warships had proven their worth. They had not only survived, they had delivered a crushing blow to the Tartak Empire's advance. "We've sent them a message," Drake said, his voice quiet but resolute. "This is just the beginning." The battle was over, but the war was far from won. The victory over the Tartak stronghold was only the beginning. The message was clear. Humanity's warships were not only capable of defeating the Tartak fleet in battle, but they had also redefined the nature of warfare in the galaxy. However, it quickly became apparent that raw firepower alone would not guarantee the galaxy's survival. The Tartak, though reeling from their defeat, were not about to let their empire crumble without a fight. If anything, they had grown more dangerous, more unpredictable. And now, the galaxy needed something more than just a powerful fleet. It needed strategy. General Nathan Drake understood this well. While the human warships had proven themselves in terms of sheer firepower, it was human ingenuity and tactical brilliance that would truly turn the tide. Humanity had always been an underdog in a galaxy filled with advanced species, but they had a unique advantage: their ability to think outside the box, to adapt to situations, and find new ways to approach problems. Now, more than ever, that ability would be their greatest asset. Drake gathered his most trusted officers in the war room aboard the Sovereign, a vast chamber lined with holographic maps and data feeds. The alien commanders of the United Resistance Forces stood alongside them, each one tense with anticipation. The recent victory had restored a small amount of confidence, but no one was foolish enough to believe the war was over. "We've won a battle," Drake began, his voice steady but intense. "But the Tartak Empire is vast. Their resources are nearly infinite, and they will throw everything they have at us. To win this war, we need to start thinking like they do, but we need to do it better." Admiral Tarath, the Vorik dynasty's most seasoned strategist, narrowed his eyes. "What do you suggest, General?" "We've already seen the limits of brute force. The Tartak's hidden fleet almost crushed us." Drake nodded. "We know their fleet is bigger than we first believed, but that's their weakness. The larger a fleet gets, the harder it is to manage effectively. Their communications are slow, and their reliance on sheer numbers leaves gaps in their defense. We're going to exploit those gaps." His officers began to work rapidly, displaying holographic models of the Tartak fleet structure. The Tartak have a few major strongholds, but most of their forces are spread across multiple sectors. We're going to divide and conquer. We'll use guerrilla tactics, striking from unexpected angles. We'll hit their supply lines, disable their reinforcements, and break their communications networks. We'll keep them guessing, keep them off balance. The alien leaders exchanged looks, some skeptical, others intrigued. The plan was risky. It wasn't a straightforward assault on a capital ship or fortress. It was an intricate web of distractions and surprise attacks, designed to confuse and disrupt the enemy. But Drake's confidence was contagious. "We won't fight like them," Drake continued. "We'll fight smarter. Humanity's greatest weapon isn't our ships, it's our minds." The plan was set into motion almost immediately. A series of coordinated raids and ambushes were launched against weak points in the Xartok Empire, small mining colonies, isolated patrol fleets, and communication relays. The Xartok were caught off guard by the unexpected brutality of the assaults. No longer did they face a predictable, conventional army. They faced something more elusive, more dangerous. The Xartok, already struggling to recover from the defeat at their stronghold, now found themselves spread too thin. As the human warships, supported by their alien allies, struck at the heart of the Xartok Empire, the battlefield began to shift. The Xartok had underestimated the power of human strategy. It wasn't just about the firepower of their ships. It was about the adaptability and innovation that drove their tactics. "This is how we win," General Drake muttered to himself as he watched the enemy forces scramble in disarray. The war was no longer just a fight for survival. It was a fight for the future, and humanity was showing the galaxy what they were capable of. The galaxy had begun to rally behind humanity's leadership. The tide of battle seemed to be turning in their favor. The guerrilla tactics were proving effective. Xartok forces were being chipped away, their communications scrambled, their reinforcements disrupted. The human warships, a combination of sheer might and strategic brilliance, were making their presence felt across the galaxy. But in the midst of their successes, an unexpected shadow fell over the Alliance. It started with a whisper, a coded transmission intercepted by the human fleet's intelligence division. The message was encrypted, but after hours of decryption, the truth became clear. An influential member of the galactic resistance had betrayed them. The Vorum, a proud and ancient species whose homeworld had been destroyed in the early days of the war, had secretly allied with the Xartok. General Nathan Drake stood on the bridge of the Sovereign, his face pale as he read the decrypted message. It was a well-organized betrayal. High-ranking Vorum officers had secretly negotiated with the Xartok, offering them access to the human tactics and fleet movements in exchange for power and influence once the war was won. The Vorum's leader, Chancellor Rail, was the mastermind behind the plot, a figure that had once been hailed as a hero in the galaxy's fight for freedom. Drake slammed his fist on the console. How could they do this, after everything we've been through? Admiral Tarath of the Voric dynasty, who had been one of the staunchest allies of humanity, stood beside him, his face dark with disbelief. The Vorum were once our strongest allies. We fought side by side in the trenches. To think they've turned on us. The betrayal hit hard. The Vorum had been key to the success of many operations, and their fleet was a powerful asset to the resistance. Losing their support, especially when it had been so unexpected, was a devastating blow. Worse yet, this betrayal came at a critical moment in the war. With the Xartok regrouping and preparing a counteroffensive, this act of treachery could be enough to shift the balance of power back in the enemy's favor. The human command team convened to discuss the next steps. "We can't let this stand," Drake said, his voice grim but resolute. "The Vorum's betrayal needs to be exposed. We'll make sure the rest of the galaxy knows the truth, but more importantly, we need to prepare for the fallout." For the first time in months, the alliances between the species felt fragile. Trust, once the glue that held the resistance together, had now been shattered. The Vorum were not only a military asset, but a symbol of the unity between the species. Now their betrayal threatened to fracture the fragile coalition, with many questioning whether any of their allies could be trusted. As tensions grew, Drake and his officers turned their focus to damage control. The Vorum's defection had already begun to cause confusion within the ranks of the Alliance. While some species began to question their commitment to the fight, others were preparing for an all-out confrontation with the traitorous faction. "We can't waste time," Drake said. "The Xartok won't wait for us to resolve our problems. We need to hold the line and prove that betrayal won't stop us." But even as Drake steeled himself for the challenges ahead, a nagging thought lingered. Could this betrayal be the first of many? Were there others in the galaxy, waiting for the right moment to switch sides, to secure their own futures at the cost of the war effort? The galaxy's greatest hope was now at a crossroads. The news of the Vorum's betrayal spread quickly across the galaxy, and its impact was immediate. The alliance began to fracture, uncertainty creeping into the ranks. Species that had once fought side by side now found themselves eyeing each other with suspicion. The Vorum, once heralded as noble warriors, were now labeled as traitors. But the damage wasn't just to their reputation. It was to the very heart of the resistance. General Nathan Drake knew that the first order of business was to expose the betrayal to the rest of the galaxy. The Xartok had a clear advantage now, not just militarily, but politically. They had already begun sowing discord, sending agents to stir fear and doubt among the remaining species. If humanity and its allies were going to stand a chance, they needed to unite again, quickly and decisively. Drake convened an emergency meeting aboard the Sovereign, bringing together the remaining military leaders of the Alliance. As the last few species of the Resistance trickled in, the room fell silent. Drake's eyes scanned the room, meeting the gaze of each leader. The weight of the situation was palpable. "We have to act fast," Drake began, his voice steady but firm. "The Vorum's betrayal is just the beginning. If we don't rally the galaxy and show them that we're still a united front, we'll lose this war before it truly begins." Admiral Tarath, his face etched with anger, spoke first. "We cannot let the Vorum escape this. The damage they've done. How many of our allies can we truly trust now?" "We'll deal with them later," Drake said, his tone resolute. "First, we must neutralize the Xartok's advantage. We know their next move. They're preparing for a counteroffensive, and they'll strike when the Alliance is at its weakest. Our goal is simple: delay them. Keep them guessing. Keep them from mobilizing their full strength. The longer we can buy, the more time we have to repair the damage." A female warlord from the Shalfar, a race known for their tactical brilliance, spoke up. "We've already seen how their fleet operates in the field. We need a new strategy, something they won't expect." Drake nodded. "Exactly. We'll launch a decoy operation, create a false front, draw them in, and make them believe we're more fractured than we are. While they chase that, we'll hit their command centers and supply lines, destabilizing their ability to launch a full-scale assault." The plan was risky, but it was humanity's best shot. The Xartok were powerful, but they were also arrogant and overconfident. If they thought the resistance was weak, they would be prone to mistakes. The decoy would give them the illusion of victory, forcing them to spread their forces thin while humanity and its allies struck at their heart. The operation was set into motion within days. The human fleet, alongside the remaining allies, moved stealthily into position, their warships blending into the shadows of asteroid fields and dark sectors. The decoy attack was designed to lure the Xartok into a trap, but it was more than just a simple distraction. It was a chance to rebuild the unity that had been lost. The resistance needed to show the galaxy that it could still stand strong, that despite the betrayal, they were ready to fight together. But as the fleets prepared for the decoy, Drake couldn't shake the feeling that they were racing against something far more dangerous than the Xartok. The betrayal had shattered the trust between them and their allies, and every move they made now carried the weight of that fracture. Would the Alliance hold together long enough to push back the Xartok? Or had the seeds of doubt already been sown too deep to overcome? The decoy operation was now underway. The resistance forces, including humanity's warships, had positioned themselves in the shadow of a distant star system, far from the prying eyes of the Xartok. The fleet was divided into two groups: the main force, which would appear to be preparing for a large offensive, and a smaller, faster group that would launch rapid strikes against critical Xartok infrastructure in key sectors. General Nathan Drake stood at the command center of the Sovereign, the tactical map before him alive with blinking red and green dots. His crew was tense, waiting for the moment when they would launch the first phase of the operation. The decoy had to be perfect. If the Xartok saw through it, the consequences could be catastrophic. "We're in position, General," Lieutenant Kira Wren, the Sovereign's lead strategist, reported. Her eyes flickered to the map. "We'll begin the simulation of the offensive in T-10 minutes. The Xartok should be ready to respond." Drake nodded, his mind racing. They had rehearsed the plan 100 times. The main fleet would send out false signals indicating their readiness for a massive assault on one of the Xartok's primary strongholds. Meanwhile, a small, elite group of human and alien ships would strike elsewhere, disrupting their supply lines and command centers. The Xartok would take the bait, assuming the resistance was focused on a frontal attack, while humanity's true goal would be to cripple their logistics. The first wave began, with the Sovereign leading the charge, launching an array of holographic projectiles to simulate an incoming fleet. False readings flooded the Xartok's communication network, showing an overwhelming buildup of forces in a remote sector. As expected, the Xartok responded quickly. Their fleet began to converge on the decoy location, confident that they were about to crush the Resistance's main force. For a moment, there was a tense stillness. Drake watched the screen, his breath held as the Xartok fleet moved into position. The trap was closing. They had to keep the illusion going, maintain the false buildup, and make sure the Xartok didn't catch on too soon. "Now," Drake ordered, his voice sharp. With that command, the second phase of the operation unfolded. The smaller fleet, a combination of human Aegis-class cruisers, Vanguard-class fighters, and alien ships, launched their surprise attack on key Xartok logistics stations. Explosions rippled across the sectors as communication relays were disabled and supply convoys were obliterated. The Xartok fleet, now spread thin across multiple sectors, found themselves unable to respond quickly enough to the new threat. "We've got them," Lieutenant Wren said, a triumphant grin spreading across her face as the Xartok fleet struggled to reassemble. But just as Drake began to breathe a sigh of relief, an unexpected twist struck. The Xartok had anticipated some form of subterfuge. Their fleet's true strength, hidden under layers of misdirection, had only just revealed itself. A massive Xartok warship, nearly the size of a small moon, emerged from a nearby nebula, flanked by a dozen smaller dreadnoughts. It was the Arcanus, a battle carrier that had been thought destroyed in the early stages of the war. The Xartok had been waiting for the decoy to draw the Resistance into a false sense of security. "They knew," Drake muttered under his breath, his heart sinking. The Xartok had turned the tables. Their forces, once spread out, now reassembled with terrifying precision, and the battle was about to get far more dangerous. "General, we have to fall back," Tarath said, his voice strained. "We're outmatched. The Arcanus could wipe us out." But Drake didn't respond immediately. The battle was far from over, and his instincts told him there was one final play, one last chance to turn this around. The Arcanus might be formidable, but humanity's ingenuity had always found a way. "We fight. We've got one shot," Drake said, his voice unwavering. "Prepare the fleet for an all-out assault. It's time to make them regret underestimating us." The Arcanus loomed in the distance, its enormous shadow casting over the battlefield like a specter of doom. The Xartok had planned for this moment, waiting until the Resistance had committed its forces before revealing their hidden trump card. The Sovereign, along with its supporting fleet, was now outmatched and surrounded. But General Nathan Drake's resolve remained unshaken. "Prepare the Sovereign for a direct assault," Drake commanded, his voice steady despite the chaos unfolding around him. "This is our moment. We're not running. We're going to make the Arcanus regret ever showing up." Lieutenant Wren's hands flew across the control panel, relaying the order to the rest of the fleet. The Sovereign powered up its engines, its massive cannons humming to life. Despite the overwhelming odds, the crew knew the stakes. If they didn't take this stand now, the war could be lost. The Xartok had thought they could destroy humanity's spirit, but they were about to learn just how wrong they were. The first volley from the Arcanus sent shockwaves through the fleet, hitting the Aegis-class cruisers with devastating force. But humanity's warships weren't just powerful. They were adaptable. The Sovereign's shields absorbed the blow, barely faltering as the ship surged forward. Its sleek form moved like a predator through the stars, breaking through the chaos, heading straight for the heart of the Sartok warship. "Ready the plasma torpedoes," Drake ordered, his voice unwavering. "We're going to hit them where it hurts." On the tactical screen, the Arcanist seemed almost invincible, its armor thick, and its weaponry more than enough to tear through any resistance. But Drake had learned something vital during this war. The Sartok relied too much on brute force, neglecting the subtlety and finesse of battle. And humanity, with its relentless ingenuity, was capable of turning any disadvantage into an advantage. The Sovereign's torpedo bays opened, and a barrage of high-powered plasma missiles shot out into the black void, streaking toward the Arcanist. The shots hit their mark, but the Arcanist retaliated, unleashing a barrage of railgun fire. One of the Aegis-class cruisers exploded in a fiery bloom of debris, but the Sovereign pressed on, undeterred. "Deploy the drone swarms," Drake commanded. "Distract them long enough to give us an opening." Thousands of small combat drones shot out from the Sovereign's launch bays, swarming around the Arcanist. The Sartok flagship tried to swat them away with its massive energy pulses, but the drones were agile, dodging incoming fire and inflicting damage where they could. The distraction was enough. In that critical moment, Drake saw it, the Arcanist's exposed weak spot, a series of energy vents along its side, vulnerable to a concentrated attack. He didn't hesitate. The Sovereign's main cannon fired, sending a beam of raw, concentrated energy streaking through space. The shot hit its target, tearing through the Arcanist's shields and striking the energy vents with devastating precision. The flagship shuddered violently, sparks and debris flying from its hull. "The Arcanist is weakening, General," Lieutenant Wren said, her voice filled with disbelief. "We've got them on the ropes." But Drake didn't let up. "Keep pressing. We can't stop now." In a desperate final push, the remaining Vanguard-class fighters swooped in, delivering a final salvo of guided missiles into the heart of the Arcanist. The massive warship, now heavily damaged and unable to retaliate, finally began to break apart, its systems failing as the critical structures collapsed. The Arcanist's massive form was engulfed in a blinding explosion. For a moment, the battlefield was still, the galaxy holding its breath. Then, as the light from the explosion faded, the remaining Sartok forces retreated, scattered, and disorganized. General Drake stood tall, his eyes scanning the remains of the battlefield. The Sartok flagship had been destroyed, but it wasn't just the ship that had fallen. Humanity had delivered a resounding message. They would not be defeated. The war was far from over, but today they had won. Today, they had shown the galaxy that no matter the odds, humanity's resolve was unbreakable. "Victory," Drake whispered, a fierce pride swelling within him. "We fight for the future."